I'm here to introduce Dr. Pratyasha Bhui, sir. Dr. Pratyasha Bhui is an assistant professor in the Department of Electrical Engineering at Indian Institute of Technology, Dharwad. Sir completed his MTech in Electrical Engineering at IIT Kharagpur and PhD in Electrical Engineering from IIT Delhi. His current research interests include power system dynamics and control, synchrophasor-based wide area monitoring systems, analysis and improvement of stability of power systems in presence of renewables and electric vehicles, dynamic state and parameter estimation in power system, microgrid control and stability. So with this brief introduction, I welcome you, sir.
Thank you, madam, for the introduction to the speaker. I request Dr. Pratyasha Bhui, sir of IIT Dharwad to present the talk on impact of renewable energy integration on power system stability.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Am I audible?
Good morning, sir. You are audible, sir.
Okay. So, thank you, Professor Kulkarni and Professor Subha Binodji for inviting me to this faculty development program. So, today we'll discuss about the impact of renewables on grid stability. See, Indian government has planned to increase the renewable energy in India to 227 gigawatt. Now it will have significant impact on the grid stability. So before adding any renewables, we have to see whether the system will remain stable or not, and how to mitigate the adverse impacts. And in case of any disturbances, if it is going to be unstable, how to take any control actions. So this is a significant challenge at present for smart grid with a high amount of renewable integrations. So I'll present some of the works on the related. So I'll present some of the important literature on grid stability analysis, prediction and control in presence of renewables. So first we'll discuss about so you can see my screen, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So first we'll discuss about why integration of renewables has an significant impact on grid stability. And then if we are planning to add renewables, so you have to do the stability analysis in planning stage only, how the system damping will change, whether it will improve or degrade, whether the transient stability margin will improve or worsen. Those things we have to see. Then once you have added the renewables, in case of any fault, we have to, in real time, we have to predict whether the system will remain stable or not. Now, if it is predicted that the system will become unstable, then we have to take some control actions. So that is stability control after fault. Then we'll discuss about what are the current research scopes in power system stability in presence of renewables. So we'll discuss about transient stability, small signal stability and frequency stability, but not voltage stability. Now, if you remember the equilibrium criteria to analyze transient stability for a single machine in finite bus, you will remember that the transient stability margin depends on few things, that is the inertia of the generator, initial condition, and the internal voltage E and the reactance X. Now reactance will not change because of renewables, so the rest of the parameters like inertia of the system, initial condition and the internal voltage, these things will change. As we all know that the renewables are power electronics interfaced, so it will not offer any inertia without any inertia modulation. So without any inertia modulation or energy storage or any deloading, it will not offer any inertia. So it will have significant impact on the transient stability. Now, once you add some renewables at one location, you are not replacing the synchronous generator at that location only. So somewhere you may add renewables, maybe in Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, or maybe in Gujarat or Rajasthan, but you are closing conventional power plants at some other locations. So it will have an impact on the power flow or the initial conditions. And also it doesn't have any exciter. So now what exciter does is that it increases the internal voltage very quickly once there is a fault. It improves the transient stability. Now those things are not there, so it will have a significant impact on the transient stability. In some cases it can improve, and in some cases it can reduce the stability margin. Now when we talk about the small signal stability or the damping ratio for a particular oscillation, now it depends on a few things. That is again inertia, because inertia influence the frequency of oscillation, electromechanical frequency of oscillations. So if the inertia are high, suppose there are two generators connected with a tie line. So if the inertias are high, the frequency of oscillation between these two generators will be less. Now the power system stabilizer or other damping control devices, those will have some phase lead lag compensator, and their performance will depend on the frequency of the oscillations. So reduced inertia will have an impact on the performance of the existing damping controllers. And also the renewables will change the power flow as we discussed and the initial condition. And it doesn't have any AVR or PSS or stabilizer. And also the renewable energy controllers like active power and reactive power controls or any other supplementary controls, those will have impact on the existing damping controllers. So we'll see how it impacts the eigenvalues of the system, whether it is going more towards left half plane or the right half plane. And then we will discuss about the frequency stability. Now generally for transient stability and small signal stability, the stability margin can improve or it can worsen. We have to do detailed studies. But for frequency, it is without any additional supplementary control. So if you add renewables, it will reduce inertia and the frequency deviation and fluctuation will increase. That is, true for all cases. Now, as the inertia is reduced, so for so the system frequency is nothing but the indicative of the generator rotational speed. Now, as the inertia is reduced, so if you have fluctuation in the power, it will have your speed of the generators will change quickly if the inertia is reduced. So you will have deviation in the frequency, and the frequency will fluctuate at a higher rate. So you will have higher rate of change of frequency.
Sir, your PPT is not visible, sir. Kindly share it once again, sir.
Okay.
All the participants, kindly please don't present anything. Only the speaker is going to present and talk.
Yeah, maybe you can stop the video or the camera, then it will the bandwidth will be more.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so now is it visible, the screen?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is visible, sir. Kindly go for full screen mode, sir.
Okay. So
Thank you, sir.
yeah. So we'll do the analysis on some simulation software. Now, how to model the renewables in a simulation software for such studies. Now, as we know that all the renewables will be power electronic interfaced. So when we do simulation for power electronics, so the typical time step will be very less in microsecond range. Now, that much fast dynamics may not be of interest for power system or grid stability studies. So we can focus only on the slower dynamics and we can neglect the fast dynamics. So for steady state analysis or load flow, we'll consider the generator on the renewable generator as a PV bus with appropriate reactive power limits. So nowadays for all big renewable energy plants, they are supposed to control the voltage as well, voltage at that bus. So and as it is injecting power and it is able to control the voltage at that bus, so we are considering it as a PV bus with some appropriate reactive power limits. Now for dynamic analysis, maybe for transient stability or small signal stability analysis. So for wind power plant, we'll
Yes, sir.
yes.
Mr. Kumar and Viresh Gonad, you have to switch off your videos. Kumar K. Kumar K. Kumar K, please mute your video. Kumar. Sir, go ahead.
Yeah. So for dynamic analysis, we will consider, as we discussed, that we will consider only the slower dynamics because that is our area of interest. The first power electronics dynamics we will neglect. So the slower dynamics include pitch control dynamics. Pitch control means the control of the blade angles of the wind turbines. So that is mechanical control, slow control. So we will consider that. Shaft dynamics means the wind generator turbine will consider as a two mass system. So it will have two inertias. So one inertia for the generator, one inertia for the turbine. So there will be electromechanical oscillation and dynamics between these two masses. So that shaft dynamics is slow dynamics. We will consider that dynamics. Now electrical controls for active power, reactive power and pitch angle. So those are also slow controls. So we'll consider those. And then rotor flux dynamics is neglected because the rotor side converter, if you know the connection diagram for the circuit diagram for the DFIG. So it's basically induction motor. The rotor is also connected to the grid with two back-to-back converters. So the rotor side converter is it will control the rotor current very fast. So the dynamics associated with the rotor current or the rotor flux will be neglected. So we can assume it as a controlled current source. And wind farm dynamics is also neglected. So in a wind farm, you may have hundreds of generators. Now we'll assume that their dynamics is similar. So there is no dynamics in between generators in a farm. So we'll consider only a single generator for a wind farm. So first we'll discuss about small signal stability. Now when we talk about small signal stability, we first so the eigenvalue is the most important thing that defines the small signal stability of the system or the damping of the system. Now if you know the system matrix A, so the entire system will be represented with some differential algebraic equation. So you will have A matrix or the system matrix. So you can find the eigenvalues of lambda I. Now ith eigenvalue is represented with lambda I, and as we discussed that renewable significant difference between renewable energy and a conventional power plant is that it doesn't offer any inertia. Now, we can check how the eigenvalue lambda I changes with respect to inertia at jth generator. So that is eigenvalue sensitivity, and it is given by that equations where Wi and Vi are the left and right eigenvector associated with eigenvalue lambda I, and the system matrix is A. So this eigenvalue sensitivity we can find out del lambda I divided by del Aj. So how the lambda I or the ith eigenvalue changes if we change the inertia at jth bus. So the test case was WECC grid with 22,000 buses and 3,000 generators. Total generation was around 580 gigawatt, and it was modeled in DSA tools or system analysis tool for steady state analysis, then transient stability analysis tools for transient stability analysis, and small signal analysis tool for small signal stability analysis. So there are 4 test cases. Now case B is the original test case with existing DFIG. Case B. Case A is the all existing DFIGs will be replaced with a conventional generators. Typically Gen row generators, round rotor synchronous generator. Case C is the DFIG power increased by 915 megawatt in case B. So this was forecasted that 915 megawatt will be increased. Wind generation will be increased. So in case C will increase the renewable generation DFIG power generation by 915 megawatt. In case D, all the renewable generators in case C will be replaced with a Gen row synchronous generator. So case B and C we have DFIG or the renewable generation. In case A and D we have all generators, conventional generators. But difference between case AB and case CD is that in case C and D we have extra generation at some locations, so it will change the power flow. So difference between case AB and CD is that in AB we have existing power flow test case. In the case C and D we have different power flow because we have increased generation. Difference between case A and B is that in case B we have existing DFIG, in case A we have all synchronous generator. Difference between case C and D is that in case C we have renewable generations with increased amount of DFIG. In case D we have all generator around synchronous generators. Now in the base case, all DFIG is replaced with the synchronous generator. So our case B was the base case. If we replace all the DFIGs with synchronous generators, that becomes our case A. Now delta lambda is the lambda base case minus lambda perturb. Now lambda base case minus lambda perturb. Lambda perturb means we have increased the inertia at all machines by 0.5%. So we'll just check that which eigenvalues are very sensitive to the inertias. Then we found out that one mode with real part of minus 0.0643 and imaginary part of 3.51. So this mode is very sensitive to the inertia, and damping ratio is 1.83%. Now, if the damping ratio is more than 5%, so the damping is good, so we will not consider those modes for any stability studies. Only the critical modes where the damping is very poor, we will consider those modes for the stability studies. So we'll focus only on those critical modes, whether those damping of those modes will become poor or it will improve. So at each generator bus, so basically wind farm was replaced with a synchronous generator. So the base value of H is given. You can see the table, and then so the inertia of that generator with respect to the inertia of that generator, we are finding the eigenvalue sensitivity of the critical mode. So whether the real part of the eigenvalue is going towards left half plane or right half plane. If it goes towards left half plane, so it is going to be more stable, so you can increase generation. But if a critical mode and its real part is going towards the positive half plane, that means your damping ratio will become poor and your damping will become poor, so you cannot increase renewable at that location. So we'll do the eigenvalue sensitivity studies for a critical mode. So we can see the sensitivity of the real part, and these are all negative. It means that delta lambda by delta H is negative. So when we increase H, your lambda becomes negative. That means more stable. When the real part becomes more negative, that means it is going to be more stable. But when we add renewables, we don't increase H or inertia, we just reduce inertia. That means it will have opposite impact. So if you reduce the inertia, your eigenvalue real part will go towards positive half plane. So your damping ratio will reduce and your damping will become poor. So it will have a detrimental effect. So the eigenvalue, so this eigenvalue sensitivity studies, it can be validated with detailed eigenvalue analysis. Now in case A, B, C, D, the damping ratio for that particular mode was calculated, and it was seen that it was a 1.83% for case A, and then it was 1.16% for case B. So you can see that case A was all generators replaced with synchronous generator. In case B, we have existing DFIG generation. That means when we have renewables, your damping ratio reduces and your damping will become poor. In case C and D, so in case C we have more renewable generation. So as compared to case B, we can see that damping ratio has reduced further. Now case C and D, you can see that there is improvement in damping ratio because we have replaced the DFIG with synchronous generator. That means increase in inertia, so it has increased the damping ratio. So however, we found out that there are two more there was one more critical mode in case C and D that was not present in case A and B. The reason was that in case C and D we have high DFIG generation in case C, and so that means it will change the power flow directions. So it is associated with increased inter-area power transfer. So basically in one tie line, there was huge amount of power transfer. So because of that, there was a new critical mode which was not present in case A and B. So the results we got from eigenvalue sensitivity studies, it can be verified with time domain simulations. So you can see that after a fault near generator 33232, so it has the largest participation factor in that mode. So basically it has huge influence on that mode. So there was a 3-phase fault near that generator, and you can see the generator speed curve. So case D, if you compare case A and B, so A is the solid line and case B is the dotted line. So as compared to case A and case A, so the damping becomes poor. Damping factor reduces. So you can see that there is increase in the oscillation. Case C means there is more renewable generations. So you can see that oscillation is highest for case C. And case D, you have, as compared to case C, we have improvement in damping, because all the DFIGs are replaced with synchronous generator. Now, the study we are doing for small signal stability, it will help us to study transient stability in some cases, because sometimes we have some weak interarea modes, dominant interarea modes, so the frequency is very low and damping is poor. In those cases, sometimes if there is a fault, it excites that mode. In that case, there is a possibility that the two area will separate and it will become transient unstable. After a fault, the system will separate and it will become unstable. So you can see that in case B, that was the original system with existing DFIG. It is stable after a fault. But for case C, when we have increased the DFIG, so damping become poor and generator becomes unstable after a fault. So though it is not true for all cases, improvement in or reducing damping ratio, it doesn't mean that it will reduce the transient stability margin. But for some weak modes, it happens that if the damping ratio reduces, so sometimes it become unstable after fault. Now that was all for small signal stability studies. Now comes transient stability. Now there are different methods for transient stability prediction as well as control. So first one is the machine learning based methods. So we'll have different measurements using synchrophasor measurements. So synchrophasor is, you might be knowing that Indian government is planning to install, or it is already have installed at some places. So Indian government is installing PMUs at all high voltage buses, 230 kV or 400 kV buses. So it will send the phasor measurement from those buses. So voltage measurements, angle measurements, frequency measurements, active power flow, reactive power flow. So those measurements it will send to a control center. And all those measurements will be time synchronized, and so it will be sent 25 to 50 times in a second. So in traditional SCADA system, the data are sent at once per 2 second or 3 second. Here it is 50 times in a second, and all the data are time synchronized. So at one instant you will get the snapshot of the entire system. So you have the time as well as the data. So at one particular instant you have the data of the entire Indian grid. So how you will use that data for prediction of the transient stability, or how to take control actions. Now for this small test system, I will give one example how to apply machine learning. So nowadays there are very sophisticated software tools to use machine learning algorithms. You don't even need to learn the algorithms. If you have the data, you can use it on those softwares. Decision tree, support vector machines, and there are so many machine learning and artificial intelligence tools. Now suppose there is a fault on bus 7 in this Kundur's two area system, and we are observing the angle between generator 1 and 3. As we keep on increasing the fault duration, we can see that just after the fault clearing, we are observing the angle between the generator 1 and 3. So when it is less than 140 degree, it remains stable, but if it is more than 140 degree, it remains unstable. So it goes unstable. So if you know the angle between generator 1 and 3 just after fault clearing, so you can predict whether the system will remain stable or not. So you can see that if there is any fault detected, so it will check the delta 1 minus delta 3 after fault clearing. If it is more than 140 degree, it becomes unstable. Less than 140 degree, it becomes stable. So this is a very simple decision tree example. But in realistic case, you have so many fault locations. Your operating condition will change. Your fault type will be not only three-phase. You will have different types of faults. You have different fault resistances. Your post-fault system may be different because some line may be tripped to clear the fault. So there will be so many cases. So the decision tree will not be that much simple. So you train the decision tree. So this 140 is very easy when you are analyzing only fault at bus 7 and that to one operating condition. So you can check it manually. But when there are so many fault cases at so many locations and different operating conditions, so you will simulate the system for all those cases and give the data to the software, and it will train the decision tree. So it will be like a tree, and it will set some thresholds for each node, and then it will finally give you the decision whether it will be stable or unstable. So it's very simple. It doesn't require to understand the physics behind how you are taking the decision. But the disadvantage is that because of large number of possible fault scenarios, it may not be reliable because the operating condition is also changing. Because you might be training the decision tree for one particular operating condition, and that operating condition changes, then a fault occurs. So your past training data may not be reliable. So typically the features used for taking the decision is generator rotor angle, speed, acceleration, active power, voltage, kinetic energy. So many things people have suggested to use in decision tree or SVM or support vector machine or artificial neural network. So next comes angle and speed deviations. So whenever there is any fault, so just after fault clearing, so this red circle you can see, so this is the fault on period. After the fault period, you will have some data here after fault clearing. Use the data to predict the post-fault stability. So you mark a threshold, say suppose if it crosses 180 degree, so it becomes unstable. So use a polynomial second order to predict whether it will become unstable or unstable. So you predict the generator speed or angle, and based on that you take some decisions. So you have a lookup table like fault locations, fault type, and then fault durations. So suppose there is a fault of 0.12 second and LL fault on line A. So you can see that we have a lookup table line A, fault location, fault type is LL, fault duration is 0.12 second, but in the lookup table we have 0.1 and 0.14. So you can see the setting percentage is 0% for both the cases. So it will remain stable. If it is unstable, and suppose we have to take some control actions, suppose it is LG fault, some duration, so you have to, based on the lookup table, you will decide how much percentage of the generation you have to set. So next we'll go to transient stability control using DFIG. Now the renewable energy plants, they may not participate in the electromechanical oscillations or the angular stability dynamics, but you can control the power very fast because these generators are interfaced with power electronic converters, so you can control the power output of the renewables very fast, and using that you can control the power system stability. So you can see that in the same Kundur system at bus number 6, we have added a wind generation. And then, so the generator 1 and 2 was producing around 400 megawatt and the area load was 1057 megawatt. So rest 250 or 300 megawatt, it was going towards area 2. So there was inter-area power flow of around 300 megawatt. If you add renewables at area 1, so as your load is in the area 2, so it will increase the inter-area power flow. Now as it increases the inter-area power flow, so if you remember the equalizer criteria, so accelerating area A1 has to be equal to the equal or less than the decelerating area A2. So when you have accelerating area in more inter-area power flow, so your initial condition changes and you can represent it any system for transient stability study. If one group of generators become unstable from the rest group of generators, you can represent with. So here generator 1, 2 are going to be unstable from 3 and 4. Now for generator 1 and 2, suppose if you represent with a one generator and 3 and 4, suppose with a infinite bus. So basically the angle difference between generator 1, 2 from generator 3, 4, that is the angle difference equivalent to the single machine infinite bus. So you can see that as the power transfer increases, the accelerating area of area 1 increases while the decelerating area reduces. So it will worsen the transient stability. Now we can control the DFIG power. So this green one will be little bit lesser. There is something wrong with this green shaded portion. This will be almost half of that. So it should be more above this mechanical power line. Now we can control the DFIG power to control transient stability. So here you can see that wind turbine blades and then gearbox 1:n speed ratio. Then you have induction generator where the rotor is connected to two converters, rotor side converter and grid side converter. Then a transformer, and the stator is directly connected to the bus N. So the power from the DFIG is sum of stator power plus rotor power. So VDS IDS plus VQS IQS. So in DQO domain, and VDR IDR plus VQR IQR. And similarly, you can write the equation for reactive power. Now, The DFI is the power in the wind is half rho a v cube. So wind power is proportional to the cube of the wind velocity v multiplied with coefficient of power Cp. Cp is the basically efficiency of the wind turbine. Now this power reference is half rho a v cube into Cp. So the wind generator should so the control action should take care of that the wind generator should give this much electrical power. So the mechanical power is half rho a v cube into Cp. Now the electrical power should be equal to that. So this is the reference to the controller. Now instead of wind speed q, we can give the the reference power in terms of rotational speed. We can represent this half rho a v cube into Cp in terms of k optimum into omega r cube. So basically there is a ratio called tip speed ratio. So wind speed can be related with the rotational speed of the rotor. So we can calculate the Pref as k optimum into omega cube. Or torque will be power divided by omega, so it is k into omega square. Now there will be torque reference, and then from torque reference you calculate the current reference, then you measure the current, and then you give it to a PI controller, so it controls so it minimizes the error and it follows that reference. Now when you want to incorporate some additional reference to the control input, so suppose there is acceleration in the generator area 1, so the frequency will increase, so we'll pass through a low pass filter and lead lag compensator, and then we'll have a PI block. So it will calculate how much. So if there is an increase in the frequency, that means it is accelerating. So we have to reduce power from the DFIG. So that will make the area 1 power deficit. So it will try to decelerate so basically it will increase power from the generator 1 and 2. So it will decelerate the generators. If we go back here, so whenever generator 1 and 2 are accelerating, so it will be, so there will be change in the frequency at bus 6 as well. So if you measuring frequency at bus 6 at the DFIG terminal, and you see there is an increase in the frequency. So that you convert it generator 1 and 2 because the loads are same, angle differences are same, angle differences between the generators are same. So it will draw more power from generator 1 and 2. Eventually it will try to decelerate generator 1 and 2. Now reducing generation from wind is like it is putting more load on the generator 1 and 2, so it will try to decelerate the generators. So here increase in the frequency, so you will have torque increase in the delta T. So you are putting a negative sign here. So when accelerating, so you will reduce power. So you are getting a modified torque reference, and then we will control the active and reactive power such that it follows that reference. So it was tested in a 3-machine 9-bus system. So you can see here that without any modification in the control law, and if you modify the control law, so you can see that there is an improvement in the critical clearing time. The critical clearing time is the basically maximum fault duration till which the system will remain stable. So you can see that the critical clearing time is increasing. That means your stability has improved. Now, third one is the energy function approach. So in the earlier two methods, you cannot quantify the magnitude of the disturbance, or you cannot quantify how much control action is needed. But in energy function, you can quantify how much control action is needed and how much the system is unstable. The stability margin you can calculate. So you can see here that this is a P delta curve of single machine infinite bus. So the stable equilibrium point is delta S. And the unstable equilibrium point is delta U. Now, how do you calculate delta U? That is 180 degree minus delta S. But that means that for infinite, so if we consider, so infinite bus is also a generator, then angle of infinite bus is 0 for here the stable equilibrium point, and it is 0 for unstable equilibrium point as well. So if we talk about both the generator angles, so it is 0 comma delta S, here it is 0 comma delta U. Now here there is only one possibility that this generator will become unstable. Infinite bus, that it has huge inertia, so it will, there is no angle dynamics, so it will, the angle will remain same. But for a multi-machine system, sometimes one generator becomes unstable, sometimes another generator becomes unstable, sometimes a group of generator becomes unstable. So the unstable equilibrium point, calculation of the unstable equilibrium point is not very straightforward. So in the energy function approach, so suppose there is a fault at 1 second and it is cleared at 1.28 second, and then at 1.28 second after fault clearing, we will predict whether the system will remain stable or not, and then it will, if it is unstable, it will send some control signal to the generating plants. It can be generator setting, it can be a fast valving or something else, or it can be braking register, turn on some braking registers. So the control signal can be sent to the generating plant. So without control action, it becomes unstable. With control action, you can see that it becomes stable. So in a generating plant, you may have say 5 units or 10 units of say 200 megawatt each. So you can set some of the generation, means you can turn off, trip some units. If you have 5 units, you can trip 2 units. So this is a 3 machine 9 bus system, and you can, as we discussed that at present, so we are installing PMUs at all high voltage buses, including the generating plants. So we'll get the data in real time to the control center, and then we'll predict whether it is stable or unstable. If it is unstable, then we'll send the control signal to the generating plant. Now, the energy function concept, it can be explained with the help of one rolling ball analogy. So this is a bowl you can see, and there is a ball inside this bowl. If you apply a force here, then it will get some kinetic energy. It will get some kinetic energy, and then it may remain within the bowl and it can go out of this bowl, depending on the how much kinetic energy it has got. Now in a power system, whenever there is any fault, electrical power reduces generally, and then the generator mechanical power is constant, so the generator gets accelerated, so it gains some kinetic energy, and then it is converted to potential energy. Here the kinetic energy is converted to potential energy when the ball climbs up. So if it goes up, so height of this ball increases, so it gains some potential energy. In power system, when the generator is accelerated, the angle difference between the generators will accelerate. So angle difference is also like potential energy, and the line in the lines there will be increased amount of increase in the currents, so it will have increase in the magnetic fields, so this is also increase in the potential energy. So if the kinetic energy absorbed by the generators gets converted to potential energy fully, then it will remain stable, otherwise it will remain unstable, it will go unstable. But in power system, the height of this bowl is not uniform. Height of this bowl is not uniform. So it depends on the how many, so which generator is going to be unstable. So if in a large test system, you can see that critical clearing time may be very low for one fault location. At one another location, the critical clearing time may be very high. So this bowl of this height is not uniform. How much kinetic energy needed to make the system unstable is different. Now the surface contains unstable equilibrium points. So energy at these unstable equilibrium points can be used to approximate the height of the bowl at different points. Now, suppose there is a fault and this ball moves up. So it has gained some kinetic energy and potential energy. So the total energy you can see in the green cross. So if the total energy is more than this height of this ball, then we can say that total energy is more than the height of this ball, then we can say that it is going to be unstable. If it is less than the height of this ball, then it will remain stable. Now, as I explained that the height of this bowl is not uniform. So before comparing the height of this energy at after fault clearing with the height of this bowl, we have to find out at which point the system trajectory will move. So based on the initial trajectory, we can predict that system will move through these 4 points. Now each point corresponds to the group of generators that tend to become unstable. That may be one generator, that may be group of generators. So each case represents one cross sign at the surface. So out of these 4, we have to identify which one is the closest unstable equilibrium point. Now the trajectory will move close to that point. How do we calculate it? How do we identify that this trajectory will move through, near that point? The difference between this potential energy, that means how much it has to climb and how much kinetic energy it has. Now, how much potential energy it has to climb, so how much height it has to climb, that is equivalent to the potential energy difference between current instant and the potential energy at these points, divided by the how much kinetic energy the ball has. So that defines the defines one index that can be used to identify the point near which the system trajectory will pass through. So now we have identified that this green cross on the surface is the point near which the trajectory will pass through. So we can compare the potential energy at this point with the potential energy at, total system energy at this point, just after fault clearing. So the energy margin can be compared, and if the fault clearing energy, the system energy after fault clearing is more than the critical energy, it becomes unstable. So this is the energy margin. Critical energy minus fault energy. If the fault energy is more than the critical energy, it becomes unstable. So delta V becomes negative. But to calculate that, we need to know the theta u, that is the unstable equilibrium point. As we discussed, that unstable equilibrium point is basically the group, if you know the stable equilibrium point theta, unstable equilibrium point is 180 minus theta. Now, if you know the group of generators that tend to become unstable, so you can find out the unstable equilibrium point is 180 minus theta for only those generators. For stable generators, it will be only theta. So the most crucial step is to identify the group of generators that tend to become unstable. So entire work can be divided into two parts: offline computation and online computation. In the offline part, so suppose there is a fault on the line 16 to 19, so we'll identify which generators will become unstable. So here you can see generator 4, 5, 6, 7 becomes unstable. Now we'll calculate the kinetic energy distribution among these generators. So you can see here that the mode of disturbance is generator 4, 5, 6, 7, and kinetic energy distribution among the generators is given by this. So if total energy is 1 per unit, what is the proportion of kinetic energy among these generators? Now in the online part, so when there is a fault, so you build a lookup table like this: fault location, mode of the disturbance, and the kinetic energy. So whenever there is a fault, you measure the generator speeds, so you calculate the kinetic energy and then you normalize with the total energy. So you get this array, and then you compare with the lookup tables. So these four are the similar fault cases in the lookup table. So out of these four, we have to identify which one is the closest one. So you calculate this index delta VP by kinetic energy corrected. Delta VP is like the how much height you have to climb. Kinetic energy is the how much kinetic energy you have. So delta VP divided by KE corrected. This index minimum means you have more kinetic energy, less height is to climb. So that defines the correct mode of distribution. So you can see here that generator 4, 5, 6, 7 will become unstable. Now, if you know that these four generators will become unstable, you can find theta, your unstable equilibrium point as 180 minus the stable equilibrium points for the critical generators, and for the rest of the generators, it will be only the equilibrium point, I mean stable equilibrium point theta. So if you know the unstable equilibrium point, you can compute the delta V or the energy margin, and you can predict whether it will be stable or unstable. And based on that, you can decide the control action as well. So it was tested in IEEE 39 bus test system, and using transient energy function, we calculated how much generation needs to be shaded, and then it was compared with time domain simulation, and it was verified that it gives very close match. Now at present in smart grid, now in the energy function, when we implement with the renewables, as the renewables doesn't have any doesn't participate in angular dynamics, you can consider it in a negative load kind of thing. In smart grid, you have their scope. At present, there is huge scope for research in different directions. So you have dynamic state and parameter estimations, because it has been reported that in 1996 blackout in USA, once they tried to reproduce the recorded results, they could not reproduce it.
Research scope.
Even if you see the POSOCO reports, once there are oscillations and they try to simulate and then reproduce those results, they could not reproduce it because the parameters they have in the simulation models are not accurate. Now, based on the measurements, how you can estimate the parameters. So that is very important topic now. And then you have wide area monitoring, as I discussed, that you have synchrophage or PMU measurements, time synchronized measurements from different places. How you can use those measurements for prediction and control of stability, or in protection purpose, or state estimation. And then you have grid stability analysis with renewables that can be offline or online. And then you have microgrid and renewables. Now there are so many interdisciplinary research scopes in you can collaborate with control and signal processings, wide area controls. Like in damping controls, generally we use local measurements, local power flow as frequency or speed, generator speeds, and then try to control the active power of the generators. But you can use wide area control where one measurement from another location will be used to get the
Control and process in mechanical engineering.
yeah. So in mechanical engineering also you can collaborate with structural modeling of the DFIs. See, in DFIs you generally neglect the dynamics of the structures, but there will be vibrations in the structures and it can damage the wind turbines. Similarly, we can collaborate with power electronics and even with the maths department. So there is huge scope of interdisciplinary research. If we focus only on the stability analysis of power system with renewables, then you have frequency response, damping, tangent stability, and protection schemes.
Impact of IBS.
So in all these areas, so you have to first see what will be the impacts. If there is any detrimental impact, then you have to design some new control and protection schemes. But not all the existing controllers and protection schemes will be scrapped. So there will be some existing protection and control schemes, and how to monitor the performance of those protection and control schemes. So for frequency response, so we can estimate the parameters like generator inertia or the total inertia in the grid, and then primary frequency response estimation. So basically, whenever there is any frequency disturbance, how much power is increased to improve the frequency. So those things can be measured from, estimated from measurements. And then you can use some battery energy storage or renewables or even electric vehicles. You can control the power from this power electronic interface storage or renewables to improve the frequency response. Then you have damping or the small signal stability. So you can estimate the modes. So basically, oscillation frequency estimation is also very important topic, because even without any disturbance, so there is continuous small disturbances in terms of generation and loads. So your loads are fluctuating always and your generation is also changing always. Because of this ambient fluctuation, you get oscillations in the line power flows and the frequency. So because these are called ambient oscillations, in these ambient measurements you can take and then find the mode, frequency, and the damping. Now, whenever there is any fault, you get large deviation in frequency or angles or angular differences or speed. So finding the frequency is very easy. Frequency of oscillation is very easy. But when it is in ambient case, the magnitude of the oscillation will be too low and you will have huge, very high noise content. So how to identify or estimate the modes in that scenario. And then, yes. So then you have unknown oscillation source. If you read the POSOCO reports, you will find that there are many oscillations and they could not find, what is the reason behind those oscillations. So because in any inter-area oscillation case, there are so many generators participate in those oscillations. So not only single generators can be, it's difficult to identify which exact generator is causing those oscillations. Then you have forced oscillations. Forced oscillations are basically because of the continuous uh, oscillation inputs in the turbine controllers, in the stabilizer controllers, ABR controllers. So there have been cases, forced oscillation cases where there are some external inputs in the turbine controllers, and then it is system is continuously oscillating. And then it was tracked that, and then found out that one particular generator is causing that oscillations. So from measurements, how to identify the forced oscillations? So it's like suppose a spring mass system. Without any controller, the oscillations will never grow. There will be inherent damping present, and it will damp out the oscillations. If there is any external continuously there is external input to the one mass and it is causing oscillations. So how to identify which generator is causing that oscillations? So there is difference between forced oscillations and natural oscillation. Natural oscillations is like it is inherently present in the system dynamics, and you find the eigenvalues. So when the damping is poor, it causes oscillations. Forced oscillations are not because of the system, but there is some error in the controllers and it is giving some continuous error signals to the reference. So most of the cases in Indian grid or USA or Canada, it has been tracked that in the turbine controllers, they sometimes give the errors in the controllers, and it gives continuous error signals to the controllers, and it gives oscillations in the power output of that generator. Now, as all the generators are connected to each other, so oscillation caused by the one generator impacts other generators, and it causes oscillation in the entire systems. For the transient stability, if for large system it is difficult to use any mathematical tool that requires model information for all generators, measurement from all generators. Instead of doing that, entire group of generators, if you can club into one equivalent and then analyze it with smaller number of parameters and measurements, that will be very useful. In the protection schemes, sometimes out of step relays will malfunction. As you know that sometimes zone 3 and out of step relays, those will malfunction and it can create blackouts. So how to identify any error in those because of renewables, your system operating condition is changing. Now one threshold you set for one relay or protection system may not work well for all operating condition. So how to check whether those out of step relays will not malfunction, or whether it will work properly or not for all conditions. So I have completed the presentations. Now if you have any questions, you can ask me.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with the in and outs of renewable energy and power system stability. Now the session is open for question and answer session. Any questions from the audience?
Good afternoon, Professor Bohi. Here, Dr. G.H. Kuman, head of the department speaking.
Yeah, good afternoon, Professor.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's a very informative talk by you people, and regarding you were given the wide range of the research area in the field of the integration of renewable energy sources to the grid. Okay, the participants are requested to make note of it, and if you have got any ideas, if you have got in your mind, just you have to free to speak to Dr. Pratyasha Bhui. He can explore some of the new ideas for you people, those who are pursuing their PhD. That's the one thing. Just one, I have got a small doubt, Pritesh Basu, regarding the protection when if it is penetrating high value of the renewable energy source to the grid. Then how the protection system, if it is a two-way protection, then it is fine. Then what you have got a conventional type of distribution system from generation to distribution system. If you are in between, if your distribution generation is added to the network, then how to make use of the protection system?
Okay, so far we are discussing about stability of the transmission grid, not the distribution grid. But if you are talking about the distribution grid protection schemes, so the renewables generation will vary with time. So even traditionally we do not have directional relays. We may need directional relays. The overcurrent protections, fault current feed by the renewable generation may not be similar with a traditional generator because those will have current limiters in the inverters and all those things. Now we need to study in detail how much will be the fault current feed by the renewable generator, and whether we need directional relays for any particular location or not. And yeah, I think that, and also whether it is connected to the distribution system, is connected to the grid, or it is islanded, those things can be studied.
Okay, what is the point of injection of this high potential renewable energy sources? At what point of the network it is injected?
Oh, at what point the renewable energy is injected?
There is a very high potential renewable energy sources. That is
Now,
usually distribution generation is added to the distribution end.
yeah, if we talk about distributed generation in smaller scale, then see, traditionally, in practice, they find the location based on land availability and all those things. But if you are talking about technical things,
Injection only can
if you are talking about the
take to
technical
the
things,
stability point.
yeah, if you are talking about the technical things, then you have to see how the voltage will change, how the current ratings,
Yes.
whether the current ratings of the feeders, transformers, those will exceed or not. Because there are some studies that the transformers, the distribution system transformers, the life of those transformer will reduce if you have a high amount of renewables. Sometimes the current will become very high, sometimes current will become low. It can have impact on the distribution transformer. And also it will have harmonics generated by the renewables, and we have to see whether the harmonics is exceeding its limit or not. Those things we have to see. But generally, the few things we should consider, that is the voltage, security at each node, power flow at each node, and then you have I square R loss in the lines. So you can optimize the location and the amount to ensure that your voltage is within limit, your power flow is within limit, and then you have I square R loss that can be minimized. So these are the things you can optimize to find the locations.
Okay, thank you. That's all from me. Any other questions from the participants?
Good morning, sir. One message has been posted in the group regarding that is a message from Mantesh Desai. His question is, sir, as the home microgrids and EV charging stations are increasing, what will be the impact on utility and utility with above installations?
See, in EV, the difference is that the power requirement system, they are allowing any EV charging stations to come up. So they have to study whether it will, it can maintain that the system can maintain the voltage power limits within that limit or not. Those things can be studied. But for from the energy charging station, the EV charging stations perspective, it will be better if they employ and if they have any battery energy storage and then or the PV plants, because it will reduce their cost of the charging. The energy cost will be reduced. And second thing is that they can schedule the charging such that whenever the electricity cost is reduced, electricity price is changing with time, so they can see the electricity price signal and accordingly they can schedule the charging. So from the distribution system operator, they can optimize the cost of their energy. So suppose for Discom, so if there is any EV charging station coming up in Hubli, so they can say that okay, this time we do not have the capacity to supply this much power to EV charging stations. So you plan your, you schedule the load accordingly. So these are part of the demand side management. So demand side management and the control aspects. So how do you control the power flows, voltage, and maintain all types of electrical security losses? Those things comes under the control perspective. Then optimization, because you have to find the optimal locations, that comes under the optimization perspective. Then you have the demand side management. How do you schedule the charging and loads and generation? Those things come under the demand side management. Yes. Any more question? Sorry, I could not hear properly.
Any more questions from the audience, please? So if there are no questions, then we can proceed with the concluding remarks.
Okay. So for stability analysis of the grid with renewables, it is very important that it is very important topic today, because in last couple of years we have seen blackouts in Australia, blackouts in Turkey. In many places, blackouts have happened because of high amount of renewables. Even in UK, few months back, the frequency dropped very low, and it was about to activate the rate of change of frequency release. So those things can happen. So, and also, so that's why the studying the grid dynamics with high amount of renewables will be very important. So for Indian perspective, I think the main issue is that distribution companies, they are not, economically, they are not very in good position to buy renewable energy power. So there is a target to buy optimal, there is a target of optimal energy mix, generation mix, how much renewable energy they have to buy. So So, but they are not fulfilling their desired generation mix. So our grid operators has to plan the renewable generations, and they should coordinate with the distribution companies accordingly, so that we ensure that we have increased amount of renewable generation, so that our pollution and all those things will reduce. Now, for the researchers, there is huge scope, because uh, in the early 20th century, when the electricity sector was booming, that time everything was new, all the concepts, controllers, protection systems were built, uh, and it took decades time. Now we are also in similar situation, because we are scrapping the entire system. The old generators are getting replaced with renewable generators. So we have to build the controllers, we have to design the protection system, everything will be new. Either it will be new, or it will be modified, or we have to monitor the existing system performance. We have to monitor the performance of the existing systems. So there is huge scope of research in a smart grid. So but if you are interested to work with me, you can send an email. You can see the research interest in my profile, and if you find any topic of mutual interest, you can send me an email. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, sir, for a very informative session. It's time to conclude the today's session. I request Dr. Devraj Sarkar to deliver the concluding remarks.
Hello, good morning. Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Thank you, Nagar sir. Good morning to all. I feel privileged to have the honor of presenting the concluding remarks for today's session. On behalf of Department of Electrical and Electronics Engineering, JC Belagavi, I express my deepest gratitude to Dr. Pratyasha Bhui, an eminent faculty from IIT Dharwad, for sharing his knowledge on impact of renewable energy on power system stability. I would like to thank Dr. Bhui specifically for throwing light on the concepts of stability margin, different types of stabilities, and how to mitigate the disturbances concerned with the application of renewable energy. His wisdom has definitely enriched our boundaries of knowledge on stability issues and related issues related to renewable energy. I would like to thank our beloved HOD Dr. G.H. Kulkarni for his constant encouragement. I would like to thank all the coordinators, committee members, as well as the teaching and non-teaching staff for their support. And last but not the least, I should thank all the participants here. Let the knowledge acquiring continue. Thank you.
We'll be starting tomorrow's session at 10:30 am. Link of tomorrow's session will be shared on WhatsApp. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone, and thank you Professor Kulkarni.
Thank you, sir.
And okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you everyone.
This is a image for area empty, and filing area base and active image and V1 figure.